This is J. Krishnamurti's fourth public talk at Brockwood Park, 1974.
This is the last talk here for this year at least. We have been talking about the last week the necessity to bring about a transformation in the very process of our thinking and a transformation in the very psyche itself. It has become necessary, as one observes what is happening in the world, outside of us and inside of us, inside the skin as it were, that we live in a rather chaotic world. A world that is slowly disintegrating, a world where there is so much violence, brutality, where moral has become immorality, where the collective has almost destroyed the wholeness of man. There is the pollution, overpopulation, and the destruction of the earth, the bomb and all the rest of it that's going on in the world. The intellectual energy, with its tradition, has not been able to solve any of these problems, neither the wars, nor the economic condition, nor the social injustice, the overpopulation, the division between man and man. The intellectual philosophy, the brains of the very, very clever people have in no way solved our human daily problem, nor the tradition of religions with their divisions, with their beliefs, dogmas, rituals, all the structure of thought in its despair and hope, fear and pleasure, has built a religious structure and made God in the image of man. None of these things have resolved any of our problems. On the contrary, they are increasing, multiplying. And we have spent a great deal of energy in the solution of these problems. Intellectual energy, emotional energy, physical energy. And this energy, with its contradictions, with its conflicts, with its varying purposeful, destructive activity, has not in any way resolved any of our psychological human problems. I think this is a fact which nobody can deny. And if any of us who are serious, and I hope we are serious, and this is not a weekend entertainment for you, if we are at all serious, concerned with the transformation of the human mind and heart, we must be concerned, we must be totally dedicated to the resolution of our problems, because the content of our consciousness is the content of the world, though there is a modification and so on. But the consciousness of each one of us is the consciousness of the rest of the world. And if there is a radical change in that consciousness will affect the rest of the world. That's an obvious fact. So we are concerned, if we are not at all playing with things, with the transformation of the mind, with the content of our consciousness, and find out if there is a different kind of energy which will, if we can tap that energy, resolve our problems. That is the question which we are going to investigate together this morning. When we use the word investigate, we mean that we share this problem together. It's your problem, and we have to go into it. We have to find out, each one of us, not according to somebody else, not according to some authority or some psychologist or philosopher, find out for ourselves if there is a different kind of energy which might resolve our human problems. The traditional energy, the intellectual energy, which man has expanded throughout the centuries, has in no way dissolved our problems. Right? That's clear. Now we are inquiring into the possibility, if there is or if there is not, a different kind of energy which is non-contradictory in itself, which is not based on the activity of thoughts with its divisive energy, an energy which is not dependent on environment, on education, on cultural influence. I hope I'm making myself clear. Please do give little attention to this. We are asking if there is a different activity, a different movement which is not dependent on self-centered activity, the activity and the energy that the self, the me, with all its contradiction creates. Is there an energy which is not dependent on environmental conditioning? Is there an energy which is not, which has no cause, because cause implies time, and that's what we are going to inquire. That is, the energy that man has expended, intellectual, emotional, traditional energy, and the self-centered energy, has not in any way solved our human problems, which are suffering, fear, and all the pain that's involved in the pursuit of pleasure, and all the confusion created by thought in its fragmentary activity. We are asking if there is an energy totally different. That is, we have only used a very small area of the brain. And that small area is controlled and shaped by thought. And thought, intellectually, emotionally, physically, has created a contradictory energy. The me and the you, we and they, what we are and what we should be, the ideal, the perfect prototype, and what is. I hope you're following all this. You should, those of you who have heard the last few talks here, should be able, I hope, to follow this together. And I think it is very important to understand that we are working together. That the speaker is not telling you what to do, because the speaker has no authority. Authority has been, in spiritual matters, very destructive, because authority implies conformity, fear, obedience, following, acceptance. And when we are investigating together, the implication in that is there is no sense of following, no sense of agreeing or denying, but merely observing, inquiring. Together we are doing this. Therefore, when we are together, you and I disappear. When we are doing any work together, the work is important, not you or I. And we are working together to find out if there is a totally different kind of energy which is not based on a cause that divides the action of the present from the past. Now, this inquiry implies or asking whether there is an area in the brain which is not contaminated by thought. An area in the brain or in the mind which is not the product of evolution. An area of that brain which man throughout the centuries has created a culture and is not touched by that culture. The inquiry into that is meditation. I hope you follow this. You understand my question, my problem, our problem. From ancient of times, we have used only one area of the brain, and a very small area, in which there has been conflict between the good and the bad. You can see that in all the paintings, in all the symbols, in all the activities of man. This conflict between the good and the bad, between what is and what should be, between what is and the ideal. That conflict, that area, has produced a culture, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, and all the rest of it. And by that culture, our brain, that area, small area, is conditioned. Right? This is obvious. And can the mind free itself from that conditioning, from that limited area, and move into an area which is not within the area of time, within the area of direction. You know, we are talking about something very, very difficult. This requires a great deal of attention, a great deal of inward learning, which is discipline. It requires the art of learning. Learning is not merely acquiring knowledge, but learning implies a constant movement, freedom from knowledge to learn not more, learn something new. So there must be curiosity, attention, and commitment. Can the mind, within the area of culture, which is the known, can the mind free itself from the known and inquire or move into an area that is not controlled by time, by causation, by direction? So one has to begin to find out what is time, what is direction, and what is it human beings are trying to achieve in the psychological field. Is this clear? What is time psychologically? There is time chronologically by the watch. Yesterday, today and tomorrow. That's by the watch. It's 24 hours. Psychologically, is there time at all? Time meaning movement. Time is movement. Right? I wish you would go with me. And time also implies direction. Psychologically, we say that traditionally we say that what is can only be changed through gradual process. And that requires time. And the gradual process is in a definite direction. The direction established by the ideal, the prototype, the archetype. To achieve that, you must have time as a movement from here to there. And in that area of time, we are caught. That is, I am what I am. I must transform that into what should be the ideal. And to do that, I need the movement of time. Right? That's simple. And the direction is controlled, shaped by the ideal, by the formula, by the concept which thought has created. We are questioning that altogether. That is, the ideal is created by thought. The thought which says, I am this and I should be that. And then the movement towards that. That is the traditional approach to transformation of man. Religiously, in every field, this is the movement. I am this, I should be that. To bring about a change from this to that, I need time. To achieve the end which thought has directed. So we live always in conflict. Because I am dissatisfied with what I am, or I justify what I am, or rationalize what I am, and conform to a pattern which thought, trying to change what I am, brings about an ideal. Right? So, time is a movement in a specific direction set by thought. Right? And therefore we live always in conflict. Because the ideal is fictitious, non-real, but what is real is the fact, what I am, whatever I am. That is so, that is the fact, that is what is. And our tradition says to change that, imitate, conform to the pattern set by the ideal, all that. This divisive process of what I am and what I should be is the very action of thought, which in itself is divisive, fragmentary, right? Thought itself is fragmentary. It has created the British, the French, the communists, the socialists, the American, the Indian, all the rest of it. Thought in itself is divisive. It has divided religions, peoples, human beings, you and I. And so we are always in conflict. And we are trying to solve our problems within that area of time, right? Are we working together, or am I talking to myself? Now, can the mind, which is so conditioned in this tradition, break away from it and only deal with what is and not with what should be? And to do that, you need energy, which we talked about sufficiently the last few days. And that energy comes and maintained and sustains itself when there is no movement of thought away from what is. Right? What is violence. Any movement away from that violence is a wastage of energy, the ideal of non-violence. Therefore, when there is no wastage of energy, then the mind can deal wholly with the fact of violence and go beyond it. Now we are asking, can the mind, your mind, which is the mind of man, because you are the collective, you are not an individual. Individual means indivisible. Individual means the whole, non-fragmented, non-broken up, as human beings are. Can that mind uncondition itself, not through time, and therefore bring about a totally different kind of energy? Can your mind, which is the result of centuries of time, conditioned by propaganda of religions, by propaganda of nationalities, can that mind, with its self-centered activity, uncondition itself not in the future but instantly? Do you understand this problem? the problem, not whether it's possible or not. You understand the problem? My mind, which includes the brain, the whole structure of human entity, my mind is shaped by the culture which has lived in India, shaped by the culture of the West, educated here, conditioned. Can that mind, your mind, which is my mind, can that mind uncondition itself not through the process of time, because then the ideal becomes to uncondition the mind, and therefore conflict. Can that mind uncondition itself without the thought of time? You understand this question? Are we moving together? Please, some of us at least. So time is the observer who is the past, and the observed is the present. All right? All right? You understand? My mind is conditioned. And the observer says, I have all these problems and I have not been able to solve them. And I will observe my conditioning, I'll be aware of my conditioning, and go beyond it. This is the tradition reacting, right? So the observer, who is the past, which means he is the time, he is the essence of time, and that observer is trying to overcome, transcend, and go beyond what he observes, which is his conditioning. Now, is the observer, who is the past, different from the thing he observes? Do you understand? Right? The thing he observes is what he sees according to his conditioning. Obviously. So he observes with a thought that is the outcome of time. Right? And he's trying to solve the problem through time. But one sees the observer is the observed. Right? I see you don't understand all this. Look, so I've put it very simply. Is violence different from the observer? who says, I am violent, right? Is violence different from the actor who is violent? Surely they're both the same, aren't they? Right? So the observer is the observed. As long as there is a division between the observer and the observed, there must be conflict. So, this division comes into being when the observer assumes that he is different from the observed. Right? Get a little insight into this and you will see what is implied in it. Now I'm asking myself, can my mind uncondition itself, not through gradual process of time, but without the concern of time at all? Because time is a factor of conditioning. Let's move away from that a little bit. We live a life of control, right? All our life is control. We are educated to control ourselves. Our anger, our appetites, our pleasures, everything is control yourself. Control yourself in order to achieve an end, which is, that end is created by an idea, by thought as an idea, right? So control in order to be righteous, in order to be virtuous, in order to have freedom. Control your thought in order to meditate. You've been through all this, haven't you? Now, who is the controller? Is the controller different from that which he tries to control? And is there a way of living without any control? Please, this is a dangerous subject, because we all want to live without control, without restraint, do whatever we like to do, which is absurd, because you can never do what you want to do. So we have to inquire into this question very, very seriously, because all our life we are educated from childhood to control, to obey, to accept. And that's our tradition. Is there a way of living without any sense of control? Neither desire, nor appetite, sexual or otherwise, anger, violence, no control whatsoever. Does this interest you? Which doesn't mean dissipation, which doesn't mean disorder, which in no way implies doing exactly what you want to do, the permissive society in which we live. Because we have to understand this, because meditation implies freedom from all control. It's only the free mind that can really inquire. Not a controlled mind, not a tortured mind, not a mind that is twisted by tradition, by fear, by all the anxiety and so on and so on. I hope you are understanding all this. So we are asking, is it possible to live a life in which there is no shadow of control, which means conflict? Who is the controller? If you understand that principle once, really have an insight into that, the truth of that, then you will see for yourself that the controller is an entity created by thought in its fragmentation, an entity who is part of the fragmentations, right? And that entity tries to control the other fragments. That entity is still a fragment, right? So the controller who tries to control his thought is the thought itself. Therefore, the controller is the controlled. Therefore, there is no division. Let me put this thing differently. Gosh, we live in disorder. Physically, psychologically, and intellectually. We live in total disorder, in confusion. If you have observed yourself, confusion being contradiction. Saying one thing, doing something else, thinking something, and acting in another way. We live in disorder, in confusion. And order is necessary. Because the more there is order, the more the brain can function effectively. It's only the mind that is in disorder that cannot function properly, objectively, right? It's obvious. Like a good machine, if it's not functioning properly, it's a useless machine. And life is in disorder. Greed, violence, contradiction, and so on. Now, can order come out of this disorder? Order, not according to the priest, or according to social order, which is disorder, which is immoral. Can order, without conflict, please listen to this, without conflict, without control, not admitting time at all, seeing this disorder in which one lives, and out of that, perfect order, which is virtue. You understood? Can that be brought about? Which means, can the mind observe or be aware of this disorder? Aware. Not what to do with the disorder, or to transcend disorder, but to be choicelessly aware of this disorder. And to be choicelessly aware of this disorder, the observer must not interfere with the observation. You understand? The observer who says this is right, this is wrong, I must choose this, I must not choose that, this should be, this should not be, this is, you follow? The observer, who is the past, must not interfere with the observation at all. Wait, let me talk, you come to the end of it, let me finish. You understand the question? Can you do it? Observe your disorder without the interference, without the movement of thought, which is time, just to observe. And observation implies attention, obviously. And when you are attending totally to disorder, is there disorder? And so order becomes like the highest form of mathematics, which is complete order. So there is a way of living without a single control, which is to observe without the movement of thought as time, and merely to observe without the interference of thought. Go into it, you will see this. What creates time is the division between the observer and the observed. And you have removed this division altogether when there is total attention and awareness. Right? That is, we have said during these talks and previous talks that unless you establish in one's life, daily life, a relationship between each other, man, woman, child, mother, within the neighbor, whether he is close to you or far away from you, unless we establish a relationship in which the image of you and the image of her or him is non-existent, which we have talked about enough, so that there is a relationship, an actual relationship, not a relationship between two images. That is absolutely necessary. Then order, because order is moral, virtuous. Without order, you cannot possibly proceed further. Order means a brain that can function effectively, objectively, non-personally. Now, having established this, which is order, now we're asking whether the brain, that area, small area, which is so controlled, which is so shaped by culture, by time, whether the mind can be free of all that, which means function in the field of knowledge effectively. Right? Now, we are asking another question, which is, can the mind, can the brain, or let me put it differently. Is there a part of the brain which is not touched at all by human endeavor, by human violence, by human hope, desire, and all the rest of it? Now, how are you going to find this out? You understand my question? I have brought about, not I have, the mind has brought about order within that area, within that small area. Without that order, there is no freedom to inquire. Therefore, there must be complete order in there. Order means freedom, obviously. Order means security, so that there is no disturbance. Now, the mind says, I know, I've lived here, and I see the necessity of order, responsibility in relationship, and so on. But the human problems are not solved. There must be a different kind of energy. And the mind says, is there such energy? You following all this? This is meditation. Not sitting quietly, breathing in a certain way, following a system. You understand? Which all the gurus in the world teach you how to meditate, which is all silly nonsense. But to find out if there is an area of the brain where there may be a different kind of energy, and perhaps there may be a state where there may be an area where time doesn't exist. Therefore, an immeasurable space. How is the mind to find this out, if there is such thing? Therefore, first there must be doubt. You understand? Doubt. Doubt is a purifying thing. But also, you must know how to hold it in leash. You understand what I'm saying? You must not only doubt, must hold it in leash. Otherwise you would doubt everything, which would be too stupid. So doubt is necessary. Whatever you experience, doubt. Because your experience is based on your experiencer. The experiencer is the experience. You understand? Therefore, the search for experience more becomes silly. And doubt, and the mind must be very clear not to create illusions. I can imagine that I've got the new kind of energy. You follow? I'm achieved in timeless state, which are all tummy rot. Therefore, one must be very clear that to have no illusion. Now, illusion comes into being only when there is a desire to achieve something. Psychologically, we are talking about. When I desire to achieve God, whatever that God is, that God which I have created out of myself, it is an illusion. So I must understand very clearly this desire and the drive and the energy that desire has. I desire, living in a shoddy little world, shoddy little life, a life of ugliness, brutality, I desire to have a marvelous, peaceful life. According to my desire, I create the illusion that I am living in a marvelous world. And I call that an intuition also. So there must be doubt and no factor of illusion. You understand what we're talking about? This is very serious, it isn't a plaything. And all religions have created illusions. Because religions are the product of our desire, exploited by the priests with all their business. So, then to come upon that energy, if there is such energy, if there is such immeasurable state, thought must be absolutely quiet. You understand? Without control. Is that possible? You understand, sir? Our thought is endlessly chattering. Our thought is always in action. I want to find out if there is that state. All right, I'll doubt. I'll have no illusion. I will live a life of order, because that's other state may be marvelous, therefore I must have it. It is chattering, endlessly. Can that chatter come to an end without any control, without any suppression? Because any form of suppression, control, distorts the full movement of a brain, of every form of distortion must come to an end. Otherwise, the brain ends up in a neurotic action of security. So I'm asking myself and you whether the brain can be whether the mind can be absolutely still. That means, can time have a stop? Can thought come to an end? But only function where it is necessary, which is in the field of the known. In technological world, how to drive a car, when I speak English or French or whatever it is. That's the field of the known. Otherwise, it has no place. But my mind is chattering. I am not this, I must be that, I must be beautiful. Oh, why didn't I do that yesterday? Oh, I have this and that. You follow? This endless chattering going on. Can the mind be completely quiet? And they say, all the gurus, all the traditionalists say, it can be quiet only when you have completest of controls. Therefore, follow this system to control it. That system invented by some bearded gentleman, and you accept it. Or unsaved, saved, whatever you like. Now, can the mind, please listen to this, be completely quiet? Because if it's not quiet, it cannot move into any other field. It will carry its own momentum into the other, if there is the other. Because I'm doubting the other all the time. Because I don't want to be caught in an illusion, which is so easy, so cheap, and so vulgar. I have this problem. Nobody can answer me. You understand? I'm putting this problem to you to find out, to exercise your capacity, brain, to find out if your mind can be absolutely quiet, which means the ending of time, the ending of thought. Without effort, without control, without any form of suppression. Is your mind ever quiet? Not daydreaming, not vacant, but quiet, and yet attentive, aware. Haven't you known it? Haven't you known it happen occasionally when you're not involved in it? Because to see anything or to hear anything, the mind must be quiet, mustn't it? If you are chattering, and I hope you're not now, you are not listening to what is being said, right? Your very interest in what is being said brings about this quietness of mind that will listen. I'm interested in what you're talking about, because it affects my life, my ways of living, what I do, what I think. It affects me. And I want to listen to you completely, not only verbally, but behind the words. Not the semantic movement of thought, but also behind. I want to find out exactly what you say, not interpret what you say. Translate according to my pleasure and vanity what you say. So my very intensity of listening to you to find out, I have to have a quiet mind, haven't I? I wonder if you see this. I have not compelled the mind to be quiet. The very attention to listen to you is quietness. You understand? The very attention to find out if the mind can be completely quiet is quietness. I wonder if you get this. And this silence of the mind is necessary. Untrained silence. Because trained silence is noise, is meaningless. Therefore, meditation is not a controlled, directed activity, but it is an activity of no thought. I wonder if you realize all this. Then you will find out for yourself if there is or if there is not something which is not nameable, which is not within the field of time. And without finding that out, without coming upon it, without seeing the truth of it or the falseness of it, life becomes a shallow, empty thing. You may have perfect order in yourself. You may have no conflict because you have become very alert, watchful. But all that becomes utterly superficial without the other. So meditation, contemplation, not in the Christian sense or in the Asiatic sense, means thought operating only in the field of the known and thought realizing itself that it cannot move into any other field. Therefore, ending of thought means ending of time. Right. Do you want to ask any questions about this? What, sir? Is unfragmented thought insight? I'm afraid you put the question wrongly, haven't you? Thought itself is fragmentation. Thought itself breaks up. In itself is a factor of breaking up. The Hindu, the Muslim, the Christian, the Catholic, the Jew, the Arab, the communist, the socialist, and so on. Thought in itself is a movement of fragmentation. Thought cannot have insight. Insight only takes place when the mind is acting as a whole. That is, I listen to you, to the fact, to the statement that time must have a stop. Thought must come to an end. I listen to you. How do I listen to you? Do I, by listening to you, draw a conclusion from what you have said? You understand? Draw a conclusion, an abstraction from what you have said, and that abstraction is an idea. And I go away after listening to that statement and say, that idea I agree or disagree. How am I to do it? I'm concerned with the idea, not with the fact of listening to you, understanding what you are saying. Right? So fragmentation takes place when I do not listen to you totally, but draw an abstraction as an idea and follow that idea, which is a fragmentation. So insight is to listen without abstraction, to listen to you wholly. In that attention, I see the fact, I see the truth of what you're saying, or the falseness of what you're saying. That is insight. That is understanding. What's up? So, you see, you have already drawn a conclusion. You have already drawn a conclusion. You have drawn an abstraction, which is no thought and therefore no action or inaction. Can you live without action? You understand, sir? Can you live without action?
Well, you see, I think... Look, I don't think I feel.
And
That I have experienced times when time hasn't existed. But
gentleman says, I've had moments, occasions, when time has ceased. And now that moments is a memory, and I would like to have some more of those of that thing which is past, which is an abstraction from the fact that you have had an occasion where time has ended. Now it will become a memory, and you pursue that memory. Pursue a dead thing. Now, can you please listen to me? Can you? When those occasions in which time came to an end, not carry it over the next day, end it. So that your mind is again fresh to find out. So, sir, look, as we said yesterday, if you are here, is love a memory? A thing that you remembered, which gave pleasure, delight, sexual or otherwise? So we're asking, is love a memory? Is love a desire? A desire according to a past picture, past image, and that past image, picture, symbol stimulates, and you say, I love you. So is love a memory, a stimulation, a thing of time? Or it has nothing to do with time, stimulation, or imagination? Go into it. So you don't... See, we are all second-hand people. We want to be told. We never find out. Work at it.
When the mind is wholly listening, or when it's quiet, it's in a way like being asleep. And when soon as I move, it's not quiet. I mean physically. I can't do anything.
When I'm quiet, the questioner says, it's like sleep. And if I move physically, that quietness is gone. Therefore, I must remain absolutely immobile physically. You follow what you're all saying? And sleep. What is the function of sleep? If you are interested in, if you don't go to bed too late and drunk or whatever, taking pills and all the rest of it in order to sleep, what is the function of sleep? Have you ever gone into it? And what are dreams? And what is the necessity for dreams? You for all these things. Do you want me to go into all that? Why? As an amusement? As something new? So,
I would like to know whether it would be possible to move and be quiet.
of course, sir. My Lord, I'm not paralyzed and therefore I'm quiet. Is quietness, this quiet mind, dependent on the physical action or inaction? If it is, then I must sit absolutely quiet, never moving, which means inaction. Who is going to feed me? Who is going to look after me? My wife, my disciple? Why should they look after me? Now, sir, you're all playing, you follow? This is too deadly serious. This is not something you play around with. If you're interested in this question of sleep, what is the function of sleep and what is the function of being awake? You understand? The two go together, sleep and keeping awake. Now, are you awake now? I know you have your eyes open, you are listening, sitting in, not lying down flat or sideways, but are you awake? Partly, aren't you? No? Do inquire into it, please. Do go into this question. What does it mean to be awake? Does it mean keep your eyes open, carrying on your traditional activities, following a routine, whether in the household or in the office, or walking along in the woods, just to keep going, routine, conforming to a pattern, or accepting and pursuing your desires? What does it mean to keep awake? To learn, to be aware. Are you aware, or is that an idea? Don't you? To keep awake implies a mind that is not conforming. So you have to find out whether your mind is conforming. And where is conformity and non-conformity? It's like, where is cooperation and non-cooperation? You understand? Where do you cooperate? And also to know when not to cooperate. So, when the mind is conforming to a pattern, to a tradition, saying I'm an Englishman, I'm a German, I'm this, I'm that, my country, my God, my belief, that is conformity. And such a mind is asleep, because that's the easiest way to live. Conforming. No? Where there's conformity, there's security. Especially in a country where either Catholicism or Protestantism or Hinduism or Buddhism becomes very strong, is strong. Therefore you have to conform, otherwise you now might not get a job. Go into it. Is the mind awake when it's frightened, when it is suffering, when it is prejudiced, when it's crammed full of opinions? And such a mind goes to sleep, half awake during the day and almost asleep like heavy log. Right? So, a mind that is not conforming, has understood the full meaning of fear and has gone beyond it, and a mind that is in order, is an awakened mind who is watching, listening, observing, aware, attentive. Right? Such a mind goes to sleep. Then what happens? Go on, sir, this is... When during the day you are awake, following, observing all the unconscious intimations and hints, that is to be awake, isn't it? To see what your unconscious is telling you also, not only the outward activities and responses, stimuli, but also what the unconscious, the inward intimations, inward asking, demanding, suggesting. To be awake to all that. Then such a mind goes to sleep, the body goes to sleep. Then what takes place?
It rests.
You see, now just listen to it. Don't give me, you follow it, rest. What does it mean, rest? Have you ever done it?
Yeah.
God, so this demands tremendous, you follow, sir? Not to conform. I put on trousers, of course I conform. When I go to India, I put on some other clothes, that's conformity. So I have to find out what is a mind that's conforming. Tradition. It may have created its own tradition, its own habits. Therefore it's conforming to the past habits. All that's involved, not just I don't conform.
Excuse me. You
Am I
get back to the same point there, you see, sir. You get back to the same point. How do you end the whole involvement in numbering up yourself with all this paper? You see,
I've told you, sir, I've told you right from the beginning.
no, on the contrary, you don't. You see, you express it very clearly. You say
I have told you, sir, just listen.
Bit by bit.
I-
Please listen to me.
I will.
You see, you pointed out, you show the spider's web so clearly, it's ridiculous, right? So one listens, and one listens for many years, right? Listens. Then you get back to some point or the other along the way where you've really got to take it, 1,000,000% seriously.
I'm listening, sir.
What else is there to say then?
What are you saying, sir? You come to a certain point and you don't tell us what to do.
No.
Then what are you trying to say, sir?
How do you end all the rubbish that you are
I-
so clearly expressing?
Right. Will you listen to me now? I'll tell you.
Yeah.
How do you end all the garbage, rubbish that one has collected?
And continue.
But just listen, sir. You asked me.
Yeah.
Is one aware of this garbage? Or you are merely aware of the word, not the actual fact of the garbage? Go on, sir. I hear you tell me that I have got garbage, this weight. Am I listening to the word and therefore recognizing through the word the fact? Or am I aware of the fact, not of the word? You see the difference?
No.
Oh, sorry, yes,
Not
sir.
that at all. Not
Sir,
that at all.
wait, sir, I'm explaining.
No, it's when I'm in relationship. It's not listening to you now, is it? It's when I'm moving from here to there with this person, that person, and it flickers like a flame, you know, and you just notice it. And what can you do then? What do I do then?
Sir, you asked me one question, sir. I've got all this collection, this garbage. What am I to do to put away all that? Right? I'm showing it to you. First, are you aware of the actual fact of this garbage, this collection? Wait a minute, sir. Don't. Are you aware of the word or of the fact?
Both.
Yes, sir. So can you put away the word and watch the fact?
That freaks me out.
Huh?
That freaks me out.
What does that mean?
Does my head in perpetually.
What?
Does my head in perpetually.
I don't understand.
I retreat into words then. Yeah. But sorry, I do continue. Yeah, right. Yeah.
That freaks me out? What does that mean?
He fights it.
Huh? It stops you. It's a new, I don't know, freaks me out. Now, please, now let me. Sir, please, this is important. Am I hungry because you tell me I'm hungry? Or I'm hungry? When you tell me I'm hungry, it's not a fact. But the fact is, when I know I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Surely these two are entirely different things. Are they not? So I'm aware of what you are telling me, or the actual fact that I've got a lot of collection of garbage. If I am aware of the fact that I've got this collection of rubbish, then I can deal with it, not with the word. But if I'm living in words, I can't deal with this thing. So I must be very clear whether the word is stimulating the fact, or independent of the word, the fact is there. You follow? Then I can observe the fact. Then how do I observe the fact? Is the rubbish different from me who is looking at it? I have created that rubbish. How can it be different from me? So I am rubbish. You don't admit that. I am rubbish. Therefore, I recognize that fact and remain with that fact without any movement running away from it. Then I have all the energy to go beyond that rubbish. I've explained this 10 different times. Isn't it time? 1 o'clock, mon Dieu.
Has the speaker found, by observing his own body rhythm, that intelligence comes into harmony at certain times more easily than others?
Sir, have you observed the intelligence of your own body? Of course. Each body has its own intelligence, that's clear. So we started talking about being awake and asleep. Not being awake during the day, or for a short period awake and the rest asleep during the day. Then when we do sleep, we have all kinds of intimations from the unconscious, which turns into dreams and so on, so on, so on. Or the unconscious says, this is going to happen in the future, be careful, in form of dreams. Now when the mind, when your whole attention is awake during the day, and all the intimations of the unconscious are revealed as you go along, then when you sleep, there is a quietness. The mind then rests, becomes fresh, young, alive. Not all the time worried with problems, you understand? So waking is as important as sleeping.